Good evening, YouTube. This is Kevin String coming at you with my regular Sunday night dinner. And I have just brought up the stream on my tablet so I can see the chat easier since my phone is mounted above my table. So what I have tonight is an XMRE Blue Line. I do not know the date on this. There's a lot code on here that's stamped into the bottom. It's a lot code, but it could be a 2018. I don't know about that. I'll have to look at some of the items inside. It has a peelable seal like the older USMRE bags had. For instance, like my 2022 pack MREs and some of the newer versions of the more or some of the first strike rations. So this is beef strips in a savory tomato sauce. These blue lines are a lighter version of their standard black label. So they'll have fewer calories, maybe 1 or 2 fewer components. That opened up very well. So first out of here is an accessory pack that has a very thin straw, similar to the hollow plastic coffee stir stick. It has a fork, a spoon, and a napkin. That is it for that. This is a standard mil-spec cheese spread with jalapenos. This is the Nexos branded. It says NGMO, but I think they made a typo or something instead of actually saying non or no GMO. These are roasted unsalted corn nuggets. Beverage base orange. This is a standard mil-spec pack. This one has a standard date code which starts with a 0, so this has to be a 2020 drink packet. The MRE style crackers, but in the Nexos packaging. Instead of packaging like this. But other than that, the crackers are the same. We have the entree here. It has the USDA inspected stamp on it. This one has a date code that starts with a 9, so this is a 2019 pack. Then here is the card that has the nutritional information for the main. So there is no dessert in here, but I could easily rectify that. I could go get something out of my stash. And then the last thing out of this bag, again, no number. This is the Nexos Flameless Ration Heater bag with the separately packaged heating element. I will save this. This will go into my stash of FRH bags with their elements. And because this does not have a hot drink, I reached into my G7 bag and found the free sample coffee, which is a latte. So that is going to be my drink, my hot drink. Sean Hack is here. Thanks for dropping in. I'm going to go ahead and mix my orange drink first. These sugar-based drinks tend to take longer to dissolve than the other ones. Pepper for the Ages is here. Spicy tuna rolls and waffles are here. Thanks for dropping in. The Carlos Perez showed up. I'll give that another stir later. This is going to be my first time trying a G7 latte. So it's quite white compared to their standard 3-in-1 instant coffee. I'm going to go put this in the pot to heat that up that way. Like I said, I'm saving the FRH for a time when I have to actually use it for an emergency food warm-up. And I will also get something out of my stash for a dessert, since this one does not come with it. I brought in an apple turnover from my stash. That G7 latte smells very creamy. I'm going to put the cheese spread on top of that. This is a larger amount of these corn nuggets than you would typically get in a standard MRE. No tear knots here, so I'll make my own. and the oxygen absorber was actually sealed into the bottom of the bag. Which I just freed up. There's an apple turnover with the oxygen absorber stuck to it. It's been quite a few years since I had any of the Black Line XMRE rations. At one point they were doing some halal 24-hour ones. But I keep looking for the cases of the halal and even the kosher ones that they used to do. Apparently these are either not being produced anymore or they're just harder to get. Appears to be pretty well stuck to the bag, so this is going to be a bit of a mess to break out of here. Very prone to breakage. I don't know if these are just too much vacuum was drawn on this, or if they were slightly underbaked, causing them to stick, or what the deal is. I think you can see in there how much of it stuck in. This has been a problem with MRE store crackers, with their branded crackers. It's a major annoyance when that happens. I just let the cheese spread sit on top of my delicious mug, and that actually warmed up the cheese spread enough so it's easily kneaded. Mother Earth Garden Club is here. Thanks for dropping in. I'll just leave that there. I'm going to go back into the kitchen and get the entree, and I'll be right back. I am back. I have the entree. Got a paper towel to dry it off with. And I use this domed lid from my regular kitchen cookware to carry it in here in. Well, that sounds like a good thing. I shake it like this. Actually, I got that upside down. The tear notches here. It goes lengthwise. That way, when I go to pull it across, I don't have as much of a mess. Say the beef strips are more like big beef chunks. It's not really a strip. It kind of smells like a pasta sauce. So for those coming in late, these blue lines are a much more limited menu, lower calorie count than the black line. Curious Pete is here. Thanks for dropping in. Got an apple turnover here which did not come in the bag, but I got it out of my stash because this had no dessert. No hot drink, so I got into my bag of G7 instant 3-in-1 coffees, and there was a free sample of a latte 3-in-1. So I went ahead and pulled that out. So that's what's in the delicious mug. So I just opened up the cheese spread. This is a cheese spread with jalapenos. There is a close-up of that. That dark speck is a jalapeno. This cheese spread is perfectly fine. This is a 2020 pack cheese spread. I'll probably keep that over here next to my crackers. There is a piece of the beef in the sauce. Minimally processed beef, which I like. The sauce is definitely savory. In fact, it could almost be too salty, but at least it's not sweet. I do like that it is not a sweet sauce. My crusher in the house, thanks for dropping in. I think this does make it in other XMRE menus, or it has in the past. I'm giving my orange drink another stir because it still has not completely dissolved. Yeah, pumpkin seeds also add a bit of flavor to a muesli. I'm going to try one of these corn nuggets. They look kind of like the corn nuts, but the packet said these are not salted. They're not roasted near as much as the corn nuts, and they are definitely not salted. I don't know if the aim was to keep the sodium level down. Or what the deal is with that. Piece of the cracker landed in the sauce, so I'm gonna drop a few bits in. But the flavor itself is fine. I'm going to put some of these corn nuggets in here. Maybe they'll take on the flavor of the sauce. Maybe a little bit of the saltiness. Gives it some crunch. But the beef, I like that it's not heavily processed, but it's more of a big chunk than a strip. I was expecting the beef pieces to be a lot longer. Yeah, these corn nuggets, the older ones, can go rancid. These are fine. They're just not salted. They're not as roasted as I would like, but they're still very crunchy. But you do get a sizable portion, which is nice. But some of the other corn nuggets that look less like a corn kernel than even these do, is these look very close to the corn nuts. But these are perfectly fine. That G7 latte is not all that sweet. That way I can taste the flavor of the coffee and the cream. So I'm happy with that. I will definitely get some more of that G7 latte now that I've had a sample of it. Yeah, it does kind of look like that, but it's just a very savory tomato sauce. I'm not picking up any veggies in here. I'm looking at the ingredients list on this. There is salt is higher up the list than a lot of these entrees are, but there's garlic, onion, and some chili seasoning. It also says it has some lemon extract, has yeast extract, also known, it can also be known as Vegemite. That in itself is very salty. It has corn syrup solids, but you really can't taste any sweetness from that. That was probably not put in there as a sweetener, probably just as a filler. I smashed up one of the beef chunks so you can see the texture and the fibers of the meat. That I do like seeing. Yeah, DeCarlos, that'll do it. I have seen that happen to other people. Which is a real bummer. But I will always tell you that we got your back. We can't physically be there, but we can still be there online. And we have for others who have gone through some issues, and we'll just keep doing that again. No, it doesn't, but I just wanted to try to see if maybe I could use the corn nuts or the corn nuggets to cut through some of the saltiness. It really doesn't help all that much, so I'm probably not going to put any more of this in there. I might put a little bit of the cheese in there, the jalapeno cheese spread. To see if that changes anything. That adds a little bit of spice, but because the cheese spread itself is also salty, that does kind of emphasize that salt flavor. Well, I did not open up this accessory packet, which is nothing more than utensils and napkin. I just opened that. So this is a hollow, it's like a coffee stir straw. I'm not sure what its purpose is. So you get this. Get this little penny a dozen napkin. And a fork and a spoon. But since I'm not using any of these will get added to my stash. That way, if I have to fall back on my disposables, if I have to severely restrict my water use, then I have those. So anytime I get a utensil in a ration or a napkin, either the wet wipes or the Canadian mints when I open up a Canadian ration, I save all those. Thanks for dropping in, Mike. Speaking of Canadian rations, I have 2 more that I will get into later in the year. Those will be in between other U.S. rations. But I wanted to go ahead and open up this Blue Line XMRE. But for what it is, if you don't need a high-calorie meal, so if you're just going to take it on a day trip, or you're going to an event where you're going to be there for several hours, but there's no food available, or you don't have the money for it, if you can sneak one of these in, it will work. Gonna have another bite of the cheese on the cracker. That's a typical XMRE orange drink. It's one of the better ones. I would rather have it than either of the red ones. Yeah, some people just cannot live without chocolate. I love chocolate, but I'm not after it every single day. In fact, I'm usually not after any kind of candy every single day. Once in a while, I'll get some. And I do have a lot of candy stored for long term, but I don't get into it. This coming Wednesday, I'm going to go to a Transit Rider Advisory Committee meeting. And usually the DART staff put out some lifesavers at everybody's seat. I took them away and I bring them home. And then I put them in a Ziploc bag along with the others that I have collected. They go into long-term storage. A couple of times they put out the little 4-count Tic Tac packets like you get in a Canadian ration. And one time they put out the Mentos gum. I stashed all of those as well. It's those kinds of candies and gum that I save for long-term storage. The candies especially, like the Lifesavers, the Nerds, the Tic Tacs, any other those other solid mints that are not like the Jolly Ranchers or the Brock's candies or anything like that. They don't melt as easily, so that's why I choose to store those. Yeah, the heavy sugar base in those. And the other ingredients that don't have a low melt point make them better, at least in my opinion. I like a minimum 60 to 65% in the dark chocolate. That would be my personal preference. Just throwing in some more of the cracker pieces in here just for the heck of it. Occasionally, I come across a 70% cacao chocolate. And I have enjoyed those. Granted, some are much better than others. You'll find out with any chocolate, there are some good ones and some not so much. Yeah, some people can probably have that happen. And there are others who simply never really had a taste for it. I mean, I love candy, but I just don't get it a lot. Once in a while, I'll get some. Outside of opening up a ration that would have it in there. But I just don't do it all that often. And speaking of such, as of January of 2026, for those who use the EBT SNAP benefit here in Iowa, you will not be able to buy candy or gum or taxable drinks like sodas. Right now, energy drinks, most of them are not allowable as of, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. But you will not be able to use the EBT SNAP card to get sodas and candy. I had seen, when I was looking at the legislation before it passed, that someone had put in there that you wouldn't be able to buy garden seeds that grow food-bearing plants, which I think is stupid. Why not be able to grow your own food? And if you have a good result, you get a whole lot of return on that, say, $1 or so investment in that seed packet. Yeah. The 80% or higher would probably be a great baking ingredient. That would probably be a great baking chocolate if it was just straight up chocolate. Say if you put it in a dessert or chunk it up into a cake batter or something like that, and you're adding sugar to that recipe, that would probably be a good one to use. I have never heard of the Who brand, but it sounds like it'd be very, very good. And with the sea salt added, for some people that may be a weird thing. They may get intimidated by it, but that tiny bit of sea salt on the chocolate or in the chocolate actually brings out the flavor. You don't need a whole lot to do that. Plus, although I've never tried it, but some people say that if you put a tiny bit of salt in your coffee, it cuts the bitterness. So the sea salt could be acting to cut some of the bitterness of the high cacao content chocolates. That could be something for that. Lindt is a good chocolate. They're probably right up there with Ghirardelli. There's a store brand that I've seen here called Zoet. It's actually a Swiss chocolate that is imported by the Hy-Vee stores. And those are really good. I have tried several of them, and I really do enjoy them. We do not have Kroger here in Iowa. And I seriously doubt that you can buy the Zoet if you do not have a Hy-Vee. But that Who does sound like it's really good one. Depending on what part of Minnesota you're in, you may have Hy-Vees, especially in the southern part of the state, because that chain has spread into surrounding states. I know they're in Illinois and Indiana and northern Missouri and eastern Nebraska. They could be in southern Minnesota. But if you're too far north, it's probably not worth the extra coin for gas to go down to the south to see what is there. I haven't seen the inside of a Perkins in a Coon's age. We used to go to ones down here in Iowa many years ago, and even in Nebraska when I was a kid. Say like mid to late 70s. But I don't know how many of those are left. I have not seen one here in this area or checked to even see if the Perkins locations that used to be here in Iowa are still active or not. Oh, there's Tim Riley in the house. Iowa brother. So, guess we still do have a Perkins here in Des Moines because he's not far from one. I'm going to go ahead and break open this apple turnover. Again, this is not included in the ration. I dug it out of my stash because the bag had no dessert, and I wanted a dessert. A decent cinnamon apple flavor. And the bread is not excessively dry, which is nice. So this is what I'm chowing down on. This is the empty bag. I'm going to call this a 2020 or 21 pack. Actually, this lot code has a first digit of 0. It's hard to see on this clear bag, but I would call this a 2020 pack if I'm interpreting the lot code to be a date code. So I'll call this a 2020 pack. And when I go to add a couple of bits of info after the stream ends, say when I go to add it to my ration and food review playlist, I'll just put the 2020 into the title. That way it'll be there for future viewers to see when this one was packed. Yeah, there used to be a Village Inn that was near Southridge Mall. I had been in there a couple of times. But that has had something else in that location for quite a few years. That building is still on the north side of Army Post Road, not too far from the west side of Southridge Mall. I had gone into a Mexican restaurant that was in that area as well, about a number of years ago. I forget the name of that one, but most of the food was okay. The refried beans was extremely soupy, which I was not a fan of. If I'm going to eat refried beans, I want it to be thick. But I just don't go over there hardly anymore. Nope. If you want a French silk, you're going to have to find another source. We used to get Baker's Square pies. That was our family favorite pie source for so many years, and we would get the Baker Square French silk. We got Baker Square more than we did Village Inn. That shows a lot has changed since I started living here in Des Moines at the end of December of '87. Wayne is here, thanks for dropping in. This is a 2020 pack XMRE, the Blue Line. It's a lower calorie, lighter version of their Black Line or their standard civilian MREs. The calorie count is lower. You may lack an item or two in the Blue Line than you would in the others. But if you don't need a heavy meal, and you don't mind not getting a hot drink option, or you choose to add your own, like I did here with this G7 3-in-1 latte. This could be a way to go. At one time I had heard that some of these were being issued to or acquired by first responders when they were in situations where they did not have access to other food sources, or they could be like disaster relief rations, something like that. XMRE has done certified kosher and certified halal rations, but those are either not being produced anymore or just hard to find because they do not show up as available on their own site. Which is kind of a shame, because I think that would be a good option for those who want to find civilian rations that meet religious dietary guidelines. Thanks for dropping in, Waffles. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those corporations that like to take over other companies that are in trouble, and then sometimes run them into the ground. These crackers are so fragile, they're hard to get a good break when you actually want to break off a piece of it without turning it into powder. And for speaking of local malls, the Merle Hay Mall, which is in the western part of the city, northwestern part, the owner of that property wants to add some things like a small ice rink. I don't know if the bowling alley is still in the basement. I haven't been in there a long time, so I don't know if that's still active. But they want to add an ice rink to the property somewhere. Yeah, the malls are just not what they used to be back in the day. Wow. I had no idea Famous Dave's was involved in that. Of course, I don't keep track of a whole lot of that stuff. I don't frequent those places. So I hardly pay attention to any of that. I have been following the Maverick purchase of Come and Go. That's the KUM spelling. That gas station chain is going to be rebranded as Maverick, and that name is spelled with no C in it. That will be happening over the next few months. So it'll be interesting to see how well that works, how well locals take to it. They have already, the new owner has already given the shove off to a bunch of the Come and Go upper management, or some of the executive level staff that worked in what was the Come and Go headquarters that was actually built here not all that many years ago. I rode the bus by that construction site all the time until it was completed. But we were talking about that transition with the Come and Go being renamed Maverick. So we were talking with my relatives when we had pizza after my mom had a couple of doctor's appointments. We had pizza from Blaze, which is either part of or right next to Principal Park, where the Iowa Cubs minor league baseball team plays. In fact, when my oldest sister picked me up, we had to go into the parking lot of the stadium in order to get to the entrance of Blaze Pizza. And then she just went in, picked them up, and then we headed to the house that two of my sisters share together. And my brother has been living with them since he came up from Arkansas last year, or maybe a little over a year ago or something like that. But we got to talking about the Come and Go switch to Maverick as far as the name that will be on all the gas stations. Yeah, being that I don't buy gas, I very rarely went into one unless I happened to be in the area and I had some time to kill while I waited for the bus. Before I catch a bus, if there was a Come and Go, then I might have ducked in there to buy a soda or a bottled tea. More often than not, I usually get those from a Hy-Vee or Walgreens or Hillel Groceries. I don't go into gas stations hardly. Once in a while I did, but especially the quick trip that's not too far from here, I stay away from that one because there's always a police presence. There's always something crazy going on there. A couple of my sisters have gotten food from Quick Start and then brought it back. So that's the only way I was able to have some of that, is because one of them would go get it. I've never been into one. Yeah, if it's not on or close to the city bus stop, I just don't bother. That's just how I roll, I guess. Yeah, it sure looks like it's a lot better. I still have not gone in there. I really need to get in there just to poke around. So, yeah, that's one thing I really want to do is get in there. I just haven't done it yet. I'd say that'll call it good on the main. I go by that Casey's either when I'm riding a bus on East 14th Street or someone is taking me home from the mosque and it's too late to take a bus and the driver gets off the freeway there at East 14th. I keep looking over at that Casey's thinking, I gotta go in there. I just haven't done it yet. Yeah, Casey's has expanded a lot also. That is another Iowa-based company. They're actually headquartered out of Ankeny, which is another suburb of Des Moines. Hy-Vee's headquarters is in West Des Moines. CT used to, every time he was in the Midwest, he used to love going into Casey's and getting their pepperoni pizza. He did try one, I think it was a thin crust. He did not like it, but the regular crust pepperoni pizza, he used to like to get that a lot. Speaking of him, I hope he's doing okay up there. Getting the kinds of loads and that he likes to haul and distances he likes to travel. It would be nice if he would put up a video at least once in a while. Yeah, that quick trip on East 15th. Nope. I used to like going in there once in a while, but I think the last time I was in there, there was some not so nice stuff going on, so I paid for what I wanted to get, and then I just hauled Dupa out of there. There is a Get and Go not too far from my mosque, but I hardly ever go in there. Basically, because there's a Hy-Vee there right there on, you know, on University, 42nd. That's where the bus stop is when I want to come back east. I figure if I'm going to go into Hy-Vee to get something in there, why bother with the Get and Go? I don't buy gas, so why bother with a place like that? But that's just me. Yeah, those names are not familiar to me. There are some BP locations here. One used to be in Amico. That's the one over not all that far from the main post office on 2nd and University. But that's been a BP for quite a few years. I haven't been inside there for a long time. I think I had to go to that post office or something, so I had to eat some clock before I could catch a bus, so I just ducked into that BP and got a soda and headed back out to the bus stop. Then Hy-Vee, some of the stores have their own gas pumps. The Sam's Club and on Walmart there's a Sam Club gas pump there.